Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
And good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 14th of July. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. And as you've probably noticed over the last several days, up to about a week ago now, our websites have changed a little bit. I would encourage you to check those out if you haven't lately. If you haven't seen those sites, the chances are if you're using your mobile device or you're using your computer at home, those links that you've saved to get to your favorite spots have probably broken and changed. You'll want to go check those out so that when you need weather information, it's going to work for you in an easy fashion there. But when you get to the website, and if you have trouble finding what you want, let me know. I'll be happy to walk you through it there. You can email me at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov. And that should hit any of the TV meteorologists that are on, and I'll be happy to respond to you as soon as I can. You can always get your weather information by phone. The Alaska Weather Information Line is 800-472-0391. And of course, our website for the entire state is weather.gov/Alaska. But if you change that last part, Alaska, to Anchorage or Juneau or Fairbanks, you will also notice that all of those websites have also been updated for security purposes and backup purposes. It's a really big process, but the way that you get your information is still possible through weather.gov, and we'd like to make sure that you get what you need. So let us know if something doesn't work for you, you can't find something, or you're just wondering what happened to my favorite climate summary. We can do that. We'd be happy to show you where that is, and I would be happy to do the same, certainly on email or by phone if needed. So let me know. Here's a look at the fire danger as we go through today. Conditions have really dried out across the interior. As you well know, if you're in Tanana or Dehne, temperatures today almost got to 90 degrees by about 4 o'clock. There's still a little bit of room by late afternoon. We may see those temperatures climb up a little bit more, closer to 90, maybe even above 90, and certainly many locations actually crept above that in some of our more unofficial weather reporting sites there. But let's just say close to 90 degrees for most of the interior today is really not a far shot off from what happened in most areas there across the middle and upper Yukon Valley, the middle Tanana Valley. We're just plain hot, and temperatures on average are typically hot this time of the year anyway, so not a really big surprise that this is happening. It doesn't make it any more comfortable though. Up across the North Slope, dry conditions there, and you can see we've added back in the red spots here indicating extreme fire danger in many locations as conditions have been pretty dry for the better part of the last week or so. Things are changing though. We have had quite a bit of rain and thunderstorm activity across the central and the eastern interior. That will probably be back again tomorrow, but one thing that is changing is cool air dropping in from the north and west. And as that happens, of course, we do have some sea ice concerns that we were talking about the last several days, but it is going to change the weather for a large part of the interior as those winds shift a little bit and cooler weather drops in. Here's a look at the satellite picture. This is the visible form, and the first thing you see is dry air across southeast, but a wealth of low pressure across the western Pacific, or the western Gulf, I should say, in the Pacific. And it's not really much to write home about. It looks like a big ball of cloud cover spinning there, and looks like it may be capable of doing something, but it's really not. It's just sloshing moisture northward toward Kodiak and some areas of light rain there. Occasionally some poor visibility attached to that around the Alaska Range and the Alaska Peninsula, I should say, but by and large it's really not a beefy storm at all. It is keeping most of southeast fairly dry at this hour. You can see the wide area of showers and thunderstorms that have been widely scattered all the way from British Columbia through the Yukon and into the interior of Alaska and along the Alaska Range. Not a whole lot of that has dropped southward so far this afternoon or this evening. But yesterday we did see a few of those showers dropping southward closer to the Talkeetnas, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see that or into the Copper River Basin. The Cook Inlet's been fairly dry today and certainly toasty, as well as southwestern Alaska and Norton Sound. Once you get out into the Bering, you can see the effects of high pressure really locking in that vertical development. So we've got very flat stratus and fog out there across the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. The North Slope, pretty clear it looks like, but things are going to change. Here is the infrared satellite picture, and this gives us a little bit more of a glimpse into the Chukchi Sea. You can see this wide swath of cloud cover that's dropping southward toward the Bering Strait. That's all moving in advance of the cold front that's working toward the Chukchi Sea. And as that continues moving eastward slowly, you can detect that southwesterly flow coming off the Chukchi coast. So there's two things happening here. We've got the current moving through the Barrow Canyon along the coast. It's in the ocean, and that water current is moving from southwest to northeast at a pretty good pace, and that right now is pushing ice past Barrow. And if you look at the Barrow sea ice camera, you can see that fairly well, and sometimes it kind of speeds up there. That's going to continue. But the change with the weather is going to be that northwesterly flow that comes in behind the cold front that starts to push more of that ice toward the coast. And as it does that, we're going to wait and see to figure out how much of that ice is really going to come up close to the shore. Right now, we don't think there's a huge impact of that coming up on the shore. So the ice shove that we were talking about several days ago, not as much of a concern as it was several days ago. But we do think that there could be some larger pieces of ice that scour the coastline from time to time. So coastal erosion may be more of an issue than a really big ice shove. Nevertheless, if you still have craft along the coast there between Wainwright and Barrow, probably would be a good idea to bring those in or move them, if you can, in any substantial fashion, out of the water, out of the way, as the ice will be getting closer to the shore. And not to mention, any conditions offshore will be changing, and probably not for the better over the next 24 to 48 hours. This is one wave of two that will be coming in. The cold front comes in tonight into tomorrow, and then as we head into the weekend, you'll see on the surface charts here, there's another wave coming in behind. So we'll reset and do this again as we head into the weekend. Here's a look at the weather map today, and showers and thunderstorms were widely scattered across the interior and the Alcan border, then into the Yukon and British Columbia, missing southeastern Alaska, a huge swath of dry air across the eastern Gulf. Low pressure is only down to 1,013 millibars. Again, it's not a very strong system, but it looks impressive if you see the clouds. Some light rainfall across the Alaska Peninsula, also around Kodiak Island today, and the clouds spread up into Bristol Bay as well as southwestern Alaska. At times a few showers or storms possible there. Otherwise fog, some of that dense across the YK Delta and around Shishmaref earlier today. And if you're not under the clouds, you are under full-on sunshine and just slow-bake kind of weather. Today's forecast and tonight shows that frontal boundary dropping south and east toward the Chukchi coast. Again, Wainwright to Barrow, the concerns for ice getting closer to the coast. Areas of light rain and drizzle are possible with that. The area of low pressure that's attached to that front, at least the stronger piece, is going to remain well out over the Arctic Ocean, and that's where the bulk of that cold weather will be. But in Barrow today, if you've been under some of the clouds and closer to that coastal flow, temperatures were only in the 40s elsewhere, just away from the coast, much, much hotter. High pressure out across the western Bering will hover just below 1,030 millibars today, feeding into low pressure out across the eastern chain at 1,017 millibars. We may see a few more clouds around southeast as we head through tonight, some showers around the Copper River Basin, and most of the storms we'll see will stay out over the YK Delta and along and north of the Alaska Range. A few of those will develop and drop south. Into Friday, a better chance for showers and thunderstorms in the upper Tanana Valley, the upper Yukon Valley, and middle Tanana and middle Yukon Valleys, and into southwest a little bit more sporadically. The Copper River Basin's watching for showers and storms. Some of those could be a little closer to the Susitna and Matanuska Valleys, maybe Anchorage, but a lot of that will probably be well to the north. You see the cold front, that's moved inland now from about Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse westward toward Wales and Tin City, with high pressure right behind it at about 1,030 millibars. If you follow the lines of constant pressure here, we can pretty much guess this is going to be a little bit more of a northwesterly flow. The winds are going to pick up, and not only does that move that ice around, but it is going to move some cooler weather into your location. For southeast, a few hit and miss clouds from time to time. Look for some showers generally northward toward Yakutat and icy Cape. As you get into Prince William Sound, there could be some showers over the mountains. And out across southwest, the clouds are going to start to fill in there. Watch for some showers around the Kilbucks, maybe a storm, and low pressure across the central chain drops to 1,019 millibars. Once we get into Saturday, there's the first push that's already inland, and the cold front is really starting to weaken here. Here's the second push. This is coming into the Chukchi coast once again with areas of light rain and drizzle, and that reinforcing west to northwesterly flow that'll come in and probably push some of that ice closer once again. Low pressure will still sit and dawdle out across the central chain at 1,014 millibars. You can see ridge of high pressure across the Gulf, still controlling that very dry weather across the eastern Gulf, and therefore southeast weather. Looks like your weather stays mild at least into the beginning of the weekend, and showers and thunderstorms hover pretty much in the same spot as we get into Saturday afternoon and evening. If you're headed out to Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, or southwest, conditions should remain fairly dry, at least for the beginning of the weekend. Here's a look at temperatures today. Lower to mid-60s for many in southeast. Haines and Skagway in the capital city, all comfortably mild. 66 in Sitka. Ketchikan and Annette and Goon, all fairly mild, low to mid-60s there. 72 at Hyder. This is all at 3 o'clock. It's probably a little warmer where you are right now. Prince William Sound back in the upper 60s from Valdez to Cordova. Anchorage also mild. 68 in Kenai, 70 in Homer by late afternoon. It was 82 in Glen Allen, 77 in Fairbanks, a little bit cooler than yesterday after hitting 88 degrees and tying the record high there. 74 in Eagle, 75 for Northway. It was 86 in Fort Yukon, 81 in Anaktuvuk Pass. Once you got over that, it was a little bit cooler, but not by much. Notice the big difference there, though, along the coast. Anywhere from the 50s and 60s as that cooler, cloudier weather is moving in. 50s and 60s for the Kotzebue Sound region, 55 in Shishmaref. It was 53 in Nome. Looks like St. Lawrence Island around Gamble was 52, and Nunivak Island 58 with Bethel inland at 78, 81 in McGrath, and many locations around Bristol Bay and the coastline made it into the 60s once again. 55 for Sandpoint, 57 in St. Paul, and 53 in Shemya. Now, overnight low temperatures will stay mild once again for the interior. Lowland locations, low to mid-60s are expected. For the North Slope, look at the big change behind that front. Upper 30s there for Wainwright and Barrow, 49 in Nome. Southeast, you're looking at lows in the low to mid-50s. Similar conditions for Prince William Sound and South Central, Southwest, and most of the chain looking at 40s from Adak and Atka westward. As we get into tomorrow, it's still going to be warm for our friends in Fort Yukon and the Middle Tanana Valley from Tanana to Nenana, McGrath, all very mild with upper 70s to mid 80s there. South Central should cool just a bit, lower 70s for many locations. Southeast, mid to upper 60s, maybe a few locations like Haines and Skagway back in the 70s again. Nome 56, Barrow 44, about the same there in Wainwright, and Kaktovik warmer at 61 degrees for the daytime tomorrow. Flying weather shows a few overnight storms are possible as you get into the middle Yukon Valley. For the northwest coast, IFR conditions there, as well as parts of the Bering, the Alaska Peninsula, and most of the Gulf. Southeast looks pretty good. Some hit and miss MVFR for the north and southern ends. The central part of the Panhandle looks pretty good. That should improve by afternoon. Widely scattered showers and storms for the middle and upper Yukon Valley. IFR conditions follow the front as that moves south and east through the western Seward Peninsula and into the Brooks Range, as well as the North Slope Borough. For the central and western Bering, watch for IFR conditions there, and for the central and eastern chain, especially along the Pacific coast for tomorrow. Past conditions for now, for tomorrow, look to be VFR. That will probably not be the case for Saturday. Adigan looking at VFR. Lake Clark will see MVFR to start. Otherwise, both passes for Lake Clark and Merrill will eventually be VFR. Rainy Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions throughout the day. Windy Pass, we expect to see VFR there. And for Isabel Pass, watching for showers and thunderstorms there in Mentasta Pass. And for Tanita Pass, we expect visual flight rule throughout most of the day. For Porter's Pass, things look pretty quiet throughout your Friday, and Chilkoot and White Pass will likely start at MVFR with improvements expected throughout the day. On to freezing levels now. You can see the abrupt change coming in behind that cold wave. Levels down to 6,000 feet as you get up toward Wrangell Island, and Gulf of Anadyr as high as 12,000 feet. So really sharp contrast there. Meanwhile, there's plenty of warm air, hot air, right across Alaska with levels higher than 12,000 feet across the Brooks Range and parts of the middle Yukon Valley. Icing potential remains limited and pretty elevated at this point. You'll start to see a better chance for icing, anywhere from light to isolated moderate. But that'll be above 10,000 feet. So generally speaking, general aviation should not have much of a concern with that. For The eastern Aleutians in the Alaska Peninsula above 10,000 feet. You'll see some there, as well as areas north of the capital city to about Haines and Skagway. The jet stream is responsible for our weather change, as it is for just about any change we see in our weather conditions. The trough of low pressure aimed right at the northwest coast, coming in at 95 knots. That is running into and coupling with high pressure that is sending very warm air northward across the eastern parts of Asia, but at the same time that's shunting trough of low pressure southward across the Bering, anywhere from 60 to 75 knots with that. High pressure is still in control of mainland Alaska, but that'll change a little bit over the next couple days as that trough moves eastward out of the Arctic. At 9,000 feet, we have a broad westerly flow shaping up across the interior. Wind speeds are starting to pick up as well with the weather change detected. Anywhere from 30 to 55 knots across the northern sections of Alaska, mainly from Fairbanks northward toward the Brooks Range. And then wind speeds die off a little bit as you head north of Point Barrow again, but all ahead of that trough, anywhere from 30 to 55 knots. Ridge of high pressure still in charge of the Gulf, and northwesterly winds are light across southeast, about 20 knots there. And high pressure is in charge of the western Bering with very light winds west of St. Matthew and the Pribilofs, with more of a northeasterly flow for the central and western chain. At 3,000 feet, we still have our westerlies across the interior, our ridge across the Gulf, and low pressure north of the Aleutians. Just by a bit, 20-knot winds there crossing from east to west across the Pribilofs, and our trough of low pressures digging across the Bering Strait here with 10-knot winds on the south side, but over the Brooks Range and the North Slope, wind speeds come up to about 20 to 45 knots across the Arctic coast. So turbulence, of course, with a front moving in and along the landscape there, we would expect some low-level wind shear as well as some isolated turbulence below 4,000 feet. Especially throughout the day and spreading eastward as we go. So I kind of painted a wide swath with that here. And we're still going to have a little bit of chop around Sand Point, eastward toward Cape Sarachev, and eastward into the Bristol Bay region there. So probably as far west as Dutch Harbor and Unalaska and into Bristol Bay, I should say. So as far as southeast, things look pretty clear. South Central looks pretty good. Most of the passes are A-OK, but conditions are changing heading into the weekend. We'll have a look at your marine weather and check that out here, as well as the sea ice, in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
Circumpolar constellations and seasonal stars.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. You know, we can see some stars and constellations all year round, like the Big Dipper and Cassiopeia,
while others are only visible during certain seasons, like Scorpius and the Summer Triangle. Why is this?
Let's show you the difference between circumpolar and seasonal stars. Okay, we have our sky set up to any night this week facing north at 11 p.m. First, find the Big Dipper standing on its spoon high in the northwestern sky. These 7 stars also mark the rear end and tail of Ursa Major, the Big Bear.
We can use the 2 stars on the end of the spoon to point us to Polaris, aka the North Star. Polaris marks the tip of the tail of the Little Bear, Ursa Minor,
or the end of the handle of the Little Dipper.
Now, if you continue that line from the Big Dipper's handle through Polaris, you reach a constellation that looks like the letter W. This is the beautiful Cassiopeia, the Queen, sitting on her throne.
These 3 constellations, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and Cassiopeia, are visible in the sky nearly every night of the year. The reason why is that, as the night rolls on, the stars will appear to rotate around a pivot point near Polaris.
This motion in the heavens is really caused by the rotation of the Earth. Our daily spin causes stars to rise in the east and set in the west. But in the north, we can watch the stars spin a full 360 degrees without going below the horizon. That makes them circumpolar stars.
When you look at stars farther from Polaris, they seem to make a bigger circle in the sky. So the farther south you look, the less amount of time each constellation is above the horizon.
As the Earth orbits the Sun, our perspective on the distant stars changes. When we're on one side of the Sun, like in winter, we can more easily see constellations like Orion and Gemini at night.
But when we're on the other side of the Sun, like in summer, we can't see Orion and Gemini as well because the glare of the Sun is in the way. Those constellations are only above the horizon during the daytime. In summer, when the nighttime part of the Earth is pointed that way, then we can better see the constellations like Scorpius and the Summer Triangle. So these are seasonal constellations.
But no matter what season it is, we always have a good view to the northern sky. So we in the northern hemisphere can view Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and Cassiopeia all year long. That makes them circumpolar constellations. So now that we're in summer, let's check out the Summer Triangle. Look high in the east and you'll find its 3 bright stars. We can see the brightest star, Vega, is at the top, bright white Altair is to the right, and dimmer Deneb is to the left.
Vega is the brightest star in the constellation Lyra the Harp. Altair is the eagle eye of Aquila the Eagle, and Deneb is the tail of Cygnus the Swan. 3 great summer constellations in one big triangle.
Another easy to find summer constellation is low in the southern sky. There's Scorpius the Scorpion. You won't need to strain your imagination to see a scorpion in the long fishhook of stars that make his tail and stinger.
The brightest star in Scorpius is a beautiful red star named Antares. Antares means rival of Mars because its color is similar to that of the red planet. And this summer, Mars is nearby, so you can compare the two more closely. Antares, the star, will twinkle a lot, while Mars, the planet, will not. And for an extra bonus, look for the planet Saturn directly above Antares.
So, get outside tonight and see how the stars move over the night. It might take a few hours, or days, but you'll notice the difference between the circumpolar and seasonal constellations. Say hi to our old friends, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and Cassiopeia, and ring in the summer with the Summer Triangle and the Scorpion. Keep looking up.
Once again, we're watching sea ice conditions, especially between Barrow and Wainwright. And there's a lot of high concentration ice and thicker ice that's sitting to the north and west of the coastline there along the Chukchi Sea. As this moves south and east, thanks to a push from the northwesterly winds and the colder air dropping toward the coast tonight and tomorrow, it's possible that conditions along the coast are going to change, and that if you have objects or craft parked along the coast, that things might not be in such good working order by tomorrow morning. We're not 100% sure that there is going to be a substantial ice show, but we are pretty sure that a lot of this open water here along the coast is going to close off and that there could be some coastal erosion. One thing in your favor is that strong southwesterly current moving right up the coastline that is also working to move a lot of this ice a little bit further to the east. So conditions will be changing. They will become more dangerous as we head into the next 24 hours. And we are expecting a second push from the north and west as we head through the remainder of the weekend. So keep an eye on conditions there. Weather.gov/Anchorage/ice is the place to go for the latest information there, as well as weather.gov/Fairbanks for the latest warnings along the coastline, if there are any, and there are not right now. For southeast, here's a look at the true weather. Southwesterlies across the Lynn Canal come up to 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Clarence Strait looking at 20 knots there across the open waters, 4-foot seas along the outer coast. 20-knot winds from the west and northwest with seas as high as 6 to 7 feet along some of the southern outer coast. By Saturday, southerlies continue in the Lynn Canal. Northwesterlies from Stevens Passage southward toward the Clarence Strait. Those winds go down a little bit, and across the outer coast, west and northwesterlies continue around 20 knots with a 7-foot sea in most areas. For south central, light southwesterlies along the western Gulf Coast all the way into Prince William Sound with a 3-foot sea for Friday. Southerlies in the Cook Inlet region will run around 20 knots or so with seas holding around 5 feet. 4-foot seas expected west of the Barrens and inside of Shelikof Strait, and more of a southeasterly flow east of Kodiak Island on Friday. That becomes a little more westerly with time, and for the western Gulf and in Shelikof Strait and Kodiak Island waters, those winds are going to hold around 20 to 25 knots. Inside of Prince William Sound, look for diminishing winds and more of a variable flow with small seas around 2 feet. And inside Cook Inlet, if you're heading out to do some fishing, it's exactly what you want. Southwesterlies, light 10-knot winds, and seas holding around 3 feet or so for Saturday. So good luck to everyone heading out. Southeasterlies inside of Bristol Bay, 25 knots with a 5-foot sea. A little rougher for the fisher folks out there. Southeasterlies down the Bering Sea coast at 25 knots. Southerlies across the Castle Cape to Chignik waters, and then down the coast toward King Cove, 25 knots with an 8-foot sea. Those winds will stay up as we head into Saturday. They diminish from Castle Cape to Chignik. More of a variable flow and flat seas inside of Bristol Bay. Southerlies from Perryville westward, and look for cold bay winds and northward toward probably the Bering Sea coast around 3 feet with a 20-knot wind there again from the south. For the Aleutians, light and variable winds really for the entire chain. The strongest winds will be north of Unalaska to Nikolsky, 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. Otherwise 10 knots, maybe 15 in some cases. Pushing in from the north, if at all, most locations looking at 4-foot seas. By Saturday, more of a north and easterly wind develops as low pressure starts to come up a little bit further. That occlusion wrapping in winds from the north and the east. 25 knots north of the chain, more of a 15-knot flow for the central and western chain, and still holding on to 4 to 5-foot seas in most cases. One exception would be Unalaska to Nikolsky, where 10-foot seas are possible there on Saturday. For the west coast, southwesterlies over St. Lawrence Island with a 4-foot sea on a 20-knot wind. Easterlies blowing offshore for the Kuskokwim Delta up to 25 knots. And northeasterlies around the Pribilofs with a 15-knot wind. For Saturday, look for a south and westerly wind to push over St. Lawrence Island, over St. Matthew, and an easterly flow over the Pribilofs at 15 knots. 10-knot winds coming up the YK Delta coast with 2-foot seas expected there. And for the north slope, stronger onshore winds from the west and northwest, 25 to 30 knots with 5 to 6-foot seas there. Westerlies around the Beaufort Sea coast for Friday. Notice that southwesterly wind coming in again on Saturday and across the Beaufort Sea, 20 to 30 knots in all areas with 7 to 8-foot seas along the Chukchi coast. When we get into Sunday again, the wind should switch around to more of a northwesterly location. Tonight's forecast shows that frontal boundary dropping into the Chukchi coast, bringing rain and drizzle, as well as poor visibility and that northwesterly wind that could move the ice closer to the coast. Widely scattered showers and storms across the central and eastern interior as we get into Friday. Otherwise, another hot day for many, and the front moves further south. See you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
When shopping for your family's meals, do you know where you can find Alaska-grown products? Everywhere. They're available at your local grocery stores and farmers markets across the state. Alaska-grown products are fresher and more nutritious, and buying local helps grow our economy. So just look for the Alaska-grown label when you shop, or ask your grocer where the Alaska-grown products are. Remember, Alaska-grown. It's closer, fresher, better.
And it's all alone.